Hey guys, welcome on in. It's good to see you this morning. And as you can see, the rookies have broken camp and the season has officially gotten underway. Now, in a little bit of a surprise, we didn't get a few veterans walking in here yesterday. We got the entire offense walking in here yesterday to play with the rookies. That creates an entirely different set of circumstances because what we have now, we basically have Browns camp starting early. And let me hide this real quick. And yes, that footage was courtesy of the Cleveland Browns. Something we saw a lot of the Harold Fannin, Shedeur Sanders to Denzel Boston. We saw a lot of this happening yesterday. Now, Deshaun Watson did play well. He threw a couple nice balls to Casey Concepcion. So let's just not pretend that he was not there, because he was, and he played pretty well. Right now, obviously, I haven't seen every clip that's come down the line, but most of the clips that I've been seeing are coming from Shedeur Sanders in this quarterback battle. Now, one thing I did see, Shedeur did have to dirt a couple screen passes, which was, I'm sure Todd Monken did not like that because, screen. Yet, for some reason, maybe it's just because the defense covered it well, the screen did not get off the ground. And while you'd rather see the quarterback dirt a screen pass and live to play another day rather than doing something weird like taking a sack or throwing an interception because he tried to do too much, at the same time, that's something Todd Monken, I'm sure, does not want to see. So, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go back to an old way of doing things here. And we're going to go and we're going to try to show you a little bit of what we're doing here on the breakdowns. So, first off, we are going quarterbacks. And remember, this is camp. So we are going to stick with camp centric. And what we're looking for in camp right now, we're looking for consistency. Because Todd Monken has said he wants the person who is going to help him win this year. That leads us to consistency. Who is making plays consistently? Who is running the offense consistently? Now, everybody was making a lot of Deshaun Watson throwing a bunch of touchdown passes on long throws during minicamp. Well, Shedeur Sanders did that yesterday, mainly to Denzel Boston. And I'm sure that the media is going to say absolutely nothing, because the beat writers, they do have agendas. But also, we're also looking at the situation right now with Watson. Deshaun played pretty well. sit here and say otherwise. Because right now there aren't a lot of clips from yesterday, which is honestly good because it gives us a little bit of a clean slate to go on. But both quarterbacks played pretty well. Shedeur obviously made the plays that people were going to be looking at. I saw one video out there that said Shedeur went 3 for 7 or something like that, or 3 for 8. Then continued to show him completing passes, but completely left out the long passes or whatever. So be careful what content you look at, because this time of year it gets pretty weird. But the quarterbacks are going to have to show consistency. Because if the quarterbacks don't show consistency, then Todd Monken is not going to be happy with them. Right now, from what I saw, Shedeur Sanders was showing a little bit of consistency yesterday. Deshaun didn't get as much time. I'm sure that will change today. I'm sure they're going to swap back and forth, same way they were doing during minicamp. So we'll see how that works out. But the quarterback that is the most consistent, I believe, is the one that's going to end up starting for the Browns this season. Now, the next position group's one I've been hitting pretty hard. And that's the offensive skill positions. I've been hitting these guys pretty hard over the last several videos. And the reason I do this is because I think that during camp, we're going to see a re-energized Quinshon Judkins. He has shown exceptional bursts coming back from injury. He has shown that he is ready. His lateral movement is far better than anything I saw last year. I expect to see a strong burst from him out of the gates when it comes to getting through to the line. At this point, it doesn't really matter the resistance or anything. For him, get to the line, show the burst, show how you hit the hole. For him, those things are the things that matter most. That's one. Second, I'm looking at these receivers. Yesterday, Casey Concepcion had a really good day. Looks like they're going to be using him in a more, I'm not going to say conservative way because that would just be a stupid statement, but in a way that allows him to get the ball in his hand so he can create. He's not going to be running just streak routes down the field. They're going to try to get the ball in his hand so he can create. And that is a pretty smart way to do it with him. Denzel Boston was once again amazing. Just making over-the-shoulder catches, deep catches, finding the ball, catching it with his hands. I counted 2 deep touchdowns, maybe 3 deep touchdowns. And remember, this is camp, so they're going against a lot of number ones out there. So he's still doing the same thing that he was doing during minicamp and OTAs, which is amazing to see. And I expect him to continue to jump up the line in that wide receiver room, because you just don't pluck those guys off trees. So I expect him to keep moving up. and challenge for a starter position, if not outright win a starter position by the end of the preseason. Then we get to Harold Fannin. Whew, that boy looked good yesterday. Coming off that injury, he showed a great rapport with Shedeur Sanders, which we expected coming off last year when those two connected very, very well. He was crisp, and I expect him to become more integrated in the offense as this camp. Some more things. He was already doing a good job coming off his out routes and going over the middle. I expect to see him in more places, more positions, not just the slot and on the line. I expect to see more of him lined up in the H. I expect to see more of him lined out wide. So as camp goes on, Harold Fannin obviously is going to be a center point in this offense. I also expect Isaiah Bond to show up and Jerry Jeudy to make an appearance at some point, because those two guys are going to be incredibly important for this season. And I think from what little I saw yesterday, the Browns are going to run a lot more 4 and 5 receiver sets this year. So with those things going, we already speculated that they were going to run a lot more 4 and 5 receiver sets, but we also had people speculating that they were going to run a bunch of 2 tight ends. Yesterday, I didn't see as many 2 tight ends as I saw 4 and 5 receiver sets. But admittedly, like I said, there weren't many clips coming out. I think I saw 2 highlight videos, but on X, I didn't see much when it came to this year's camp. Saw something from camp 2 years ago, but not this year's. Now, another exciting group, the offensive line group. I love what was put together here, because Andrew Berry put together a group of guys that were technically sound, high IQ guys that didn't make a lot of mistakes. They didn't get a lot of injuries. Well, they didn't get a lot of penalties, I should say. That was my bad. Slip of the words. A little bit of trauma from last year, I'm sure, went into that one. But they didn't get a lot of penalties. They didn't give up a lot of sacks. This was intentional. Then they draft Spencer Fano, number 9 overall. Fano was my favorite lineman in the draft, so I'm thrilled they got him. He's a good pass blocker. He played right tackle for 3 years at Utah and was an all-league left tackle as a freshman. So for me, I'm looking at this. The big question is, which one of these guys is going to win the center spot? Because remember, Tevin Jenkins was the only guy they brought back. So, and they also drafted Austin Barber as right tackle of the future. So let's not think that this isn't a completely different room that needs to gel. what I expect at these guys in camp, I'm not expecting miracles. I'm not expecting them to come out against the Bills and look like a completely cohesive unit. But the offensive line's a little different. The offensive line is only as good as the relationship between the players. So I expect these guys and Coach Warsaw to come in here and gel. Hopefully they can gel quickly. Because I do not believe any of these guys have a history together. So it is going to take time. But I hope they've got enough veterans that they can gel quickly in this manner. And here's a fun part that I really love. Now, I know I'm saying that a lot, because Go Browns is the returner. I think Casey Concepcion's going to return. Just watching how he's been used in OTAs, minicamp, and now the first day of mandatory training camp for the rookies makes me believe that they want the ball in his hands. Just get it in his hands. Yes, he's had some deep balls thrown to him, but for the most part, it's get it to him quick, get it to him out, get the ball in his hands at any means necessary, and let him work. And I said earlier that there were a couple screen passes from Shadur that he had to dirt. Well, the angle didn't let me see who the receiver was. But if I had to guess, my guess would have been Casey Concepcion. Because everything I have seen is get the ball in his hands. Nothing else matters when throwing him the ball. And that is perfect for a return man. Because Concepcion, 6 foot tall, speedy, good hands, not going to engage Larvadan every single punt. He can get you yards. Maybe get us a couple touchdowns. Get us in good field position. So I expect Casey Concepcion to take that return position. Also, the kicker position. I expect Schmidt to come in here and pick up where he left off last year. I expect him to be consistent. I expect him to have an above average leg, be able to consistently hit 40 to 50 yard passes. Man, it's too early. 40 to 50 yard kicks. He's throwing 40 to 50 yard passes. He needs to be a starter at quarterback. But, I expect him to hit those. And in camp, I expect him to show that he's able to pick up where he left off. And if he can give us that confidence, I think that will be great for the Browns as a whole. Because if he can hit 40-yard field goals, that's extra points. Now we're going to a big question mark. I'm not going to lie. Defensive line's a question mark. I like the guys. But Jared Verse is an upgrade at the left end position. No, the right. He's an upgrade at the right end position over Myles Garrett in both his control of the holes and his run stuffing ability. Now he's an obvious downgrade in the pass rush because Myles Garrett is one of one. Myles Garrett was also Myles Garrett. He wanted his sacks. And a lot of times we saw it on tape for, I know, the last 3 or 4 years where Garrett would break his outside contain and go for the quarterback, and defenses knew he was going to do it, so they just ran right around the end where he was supposed to be and picked up big chunks on the outside because they knew he was going to break his containment on the outside and go for the quarterback. So that is a definite upgrade. And Verse is also one of the best young defensive linemen in the NFL. He has a good bull rush. He's a good pass rusher. He's a very good pass rusher. I expect well over 10 sacks for him this year. So if he's running over 10 sacks, then who's he running with? Well, he's got Mason Graham beside him. The problem with Mason Graham last year, outside of the fractured rib that he was playing with in the last couple games, was he didn't have much fat on his body, folks. He had some baby fat, but he didn't have that man meat on his stomach, which probably lended itself to cracking them ribs. Because offensive linemen in the NFL, they ain't kids. They're going to hit you. They're going to hit you hard. So if he showed some burst, he showed a lot of things that you like, but he's got to put that weight on. So hopefully he did that work when he got back from injury in the off season to put on that weight, because they're going to need him, especially with the injuries they have suffered on that defensive line. They're going to need him to be the top guy outside of Jared Verse. I really also like how some of these guys have stepped up in leadership roles and how they've been able to keep everything together over the last couple months with some of the upheaval. And speaking of leadership roles, Quincy Williams and Carson Swessinger at linebacker, those two guys are going to be an incredible force at the linebacker position. I just wholeheartedly believe that those two guys are probably going to be one of the best linebacker duos in the NFL this year. And if we can get stellar linebacker play out of those two, I think we got some decent depth. I don't think it's great, but I think it's decent. If we can get stellar play out of those two, I think it eases up the burden on the defensive line, and I also think it eases up the burden on the defensive skill position guys, otherwise known as the defensive backs. Now, for here, I'm looking at a couple things. Already know that Denzel Ward is going to be there, and he is going to be one of the best in the NFL. You know it's going to happen. Grant Delpit, one of the better up-and-coming safeties in the NFL. Ronnie Hickman, prove it year. So he's going to have to show up in camp. He did show up in minicamp. Ronnie Hickman did show up in minicamp, and he showed up huge. Need to see him show up in training camp here. Delpit, I want to see, because he has done a great job of coming along in his pass protection as a safety. But pass protection as a safety is about the only thing you can do in the camps, because they're not going to let you hit anybody. And as we know, Delpit is great in the box. So just like Quincy Williams and Carson Schlesinger are going to have to show their coverage abilities at linebacker in camp, which is another thing I'm looking at for them. Delpit's going to have to fit into that same mold. And let's show off our coverage ability. So I'm looking at that because right now, Shedeur Sanders is hot. Shedeur Sanders has been hot all summer. And Deshaun Watson has great downfield touch. He always has. That's been a staple of his entire 10-year career. And he pushes it downfield. He's got a great touch on it. And he's going to get it over the top of the defense. So I'm looking for Delpit and Hickman, to be honest with you, to be able to cover that deep ball. Yesterday, no safety did a very good job. I don't know exactly which safeties were in on which passes because it was a long shot. But every long ball thrown to Denzel Boston, nope, safeties did not get there. Now, I'll give him some grace because Boston, 6'4", 200 pounds, he's a tough guard. But these guys have got to do a better job of denying him the pass. So I'm going to look at camp. I'm going to look more at that because these guys have got to be able to deny that, at least to some degree. I'm not saying they have to be perfect at it, but to some degree. Now, at the other cornerback position, starters, we got two starters there. Tyson Campbell, who I've for many years seen him live multiple times and believe he, on another team, he'd be a number one corner. Here we have Denzel Ward. So he doesn't need that. And he was excellent when he came over last year. I expect that to continue. And then you have my X factor for the defense, EmmanuelMcNeilWarren. It was already said he is going to play both safety positions and the nickel 9 position. I wasn't sure where he started. I didn't know if he was one of those guys that were trying to deny uh, Denzel Boston on those long passes. Because, again, they were trying to film from 70 yards downfield, 60, 70 yards downfield. That's not going to work when it comes to seeing who was the guy guarding. But when Boston turns around and you can see 12 behind him, you know who's catching the ball. So McNeilWarren is right along with Delpit and Hickman, and he's going to have to show, hey, you can get back on big guys when they get behind us. Because that's a big part of being a safety, and all three of those guys are going to have to ensure, especially if they're all out there together in a shell on the top, that they can get back on that. And the big thing with McNeilWarren, he's also going to have to continue to show his versatility. He showed a great job with his versatility in the nickel during OTAs and minicamp. He's going to have to continue to show that while continuing to work with Hickman and Delpit to get better at safety and getting back into those coverages. And that's the big thing with safety that I'm looking at. I think corner will ultimately be just fine. And I expect a good number of highlights to come out of the camp from the cornerback position and a good bit of improvement as we go through camp. And that will bring us back to what we always wanted, a strong quarterback competition. Because we know that the offensive running game is going to be strong. Pretty darn sure the offensive line is going to be strong. It looks like the receivers are going to be strong. Now, it's early in camp. So if those three things are strong offensively, I think the defense is going to take care of itself. I think that linebacking core is the big thing. Jared Verse is another thing. And those three are going to keep that middle to front end defense together. And I expect them to continue to improve because they're young. There's a lot to improve on. But the big thing everybody's going to look at is going to be the quarterbacks. It's all going to be the quarterbacks in this camp. But the quarterbacks are going to make a difference in how you see Harold Fannin, Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston, Isaiah Bond. These guys that receive are going to really look good. And it's also going because I think Watson and Sanders, between the two of them, they're going to push. And the best thing you can ever see in camp, two quarterbacks pushing each other because that makes everybody better. And you bring that down, and it's also going to push those safeties. Like I said, that's going to push the safeties to have to show that they can cover. Because if Shedeur Sanders is popping off the top to Denzel Boston, those safeties are going to have to get back. If Deshaun Watson pops a nice out route to Concepcion, he gets past the corner, the safety's going to have to get back and prevent anything else bad from happening. If there's an en route to Concepcion or Isaiah Bond, their safety is going to have to get up there and make a tackle. Because if they come in right behind the linebackers, which is something I saw with Denzel Boston earlier this year, I highlighted it in the mini camp where he got in behind Schlesinger and caught the ball. Well, guess what? That safety is going to have to crash down. So that's going to get the safeties where they need to be. So that quarterback battle is not just a battle for the starting quarterback position. That is a battle in a lot of ways for the defensive back room. Because defensive backs are going to have to take some pride in this. Because these quarterbacks are coming out for bear. Deshaun Watson's looking to step on people's throats. Sure, Sanders is going out there dropping bombs. Those corners and those safeties are going to have to be ready. In the same take, so is Schlesinger, and so is Williams. Because in this case, they're going to be just as pivotal as defensive backs in this camp battle. So when we're looking at this, it all starts with the quarterbacks. It all starts with the quarterbacks, but at the same time, these guys are going to make everybody better, not just the receivers. They're going to make the defensive backs better. And that's what you got to remember. And that being said, hey, thank you all for sticking around. It's been a fun video. We have gone far longer than we normally do. And so grateful to have you guys here. This is my first camp where I've done this thing solo. And I thank you all for being here. That being said, this is an exciting time. This is a new look Browns. This is the next generation. And we're here to live it. So, until next time, if you like the content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Remember, this shot's on us. And remember, as always, go Browns.